So, ladies and gentlemen, in order to win this debate today, the proposition needs to show us one thing, and that is that regardless of what ideology, what extreme ideology we're talking about, regardless of what sort of extremism we're talking about, it is, if it's in the defense of liberty, then it is not a vice and it is a virtue. And then, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it falls upon them today to justify this motion in the context of the world that we live in today. Now, let me tell you why the debate that we're having today is different from the debate that we had in this chamber 50 years ago. It's because, ladies and gentlemen, in today's day and age, we're living in a world with threats such as ISIL. We're living in a world with organizations such as the Taliban, and we're living in a world with organizations such as the Muslim Brotherhood, ladies and gentlemen. And I know that this motion says that in the defense of liberty, but let me explain to you as I move on further in my speech how liberty is defined differently by various political groups, and various extremist groups see their liberty being in danger in invariably very, very different ways. But before I do that, let me move on to introducing the speakers on the other side of the House today. Speaking first, we heard from Tasha Rahman, who's actually one of the most feared members of the Debate Selection Committee in Oxford. Speaking next, we have Mr. Cornel West, who is the honorary chair of the Democratic Socialists of America. And then we will be hearing from Ms. Angela Davis, who is an American political activist, author, and former leader of the USA Communist Party. She was also, when I asked her to provide me with a fun fact about herself, she very proudly stated that she was also on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Dear Mr. President, who I'm still not speaking to, these are your speakers and they are most welcome. I will now move on to the main body of my own debate. Now, firstly, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be talking to you about the idea of liberty and why the idea of liberty is something that is extremely complicated, and within the bounds of that idea and what it means to act in the defense of liberty may mean very different things to different people. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be talking to you about what extremism is and why it is just, in what cases, why I feel that it is never justified. And thirdly, I'll be talking to you about why within extremist ideologies, even if your goals are justified, if the means do not justify the ends, or if the means that you undertake are not right, how it discredits the movement as a whole. So firstly, ladies and gentlemen, what is liberty? Now, the idea of liberty, we might talk about, Tasha talked to you about how it's about maintaining your bodily integrity. But that is not just the idea of liberty. When the Taliban, ladies and gentlemen, all around the Muslim world insist on shooting or stoning women who have male friends to death, they feel that their liberty is being infringed by a state that refuses to let them exist under barbaric rules that they claim come from the Quran. They say, ladies and gentlemen, that that is an infringement on their liberty. ISIL, ladies and gentlemen, when the movement started first in 1999 to 2006, said that it was a response to the invasion, to the coalition invasion of Iraq. And they said that they were acting out in their liberty as well and protecting their liberty from the West. In the modern day, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, we have very different conceptions of what extremism is. And in the context, because this debate is happening in today's world, we need to tackle one of the most rampant forms of extremism in the world today, and that is religious extremism. And you see this all around us. And if they want to win this debate, then that is something that they have to deal with and justify in their speeches. So, having already spoken to you about why within the modern day we have a very different conception of extremism and the fact that liberty may mean different things to different people, then, ladies and gentlemen, if a group identifies that this is the space where our liberty is being infringed and we are now going to resort to extreme measures and undertake potentially violent means to get our liberty back, then who decides what good liberty is, or what acting in defense of good liberty or bad liberty is? Who makes that arbitrary distinction? The fact of the matter is that you can't. You can't make that distinction. And for that reason, it is a very problematic case to argue from their side. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, the other thing is that at the end of the day, in any ideology that is driven by sort of an extremist narrative, you inculcate within the people a mindset that anyone who disagrees with what we're saying, or anyone who does not follow our ideology the way that we've laid it out for every single person, then they are wrong. And it is that mindset, ladies and gentlemen, which then results in sort of manifestations of violence within that movement and within that ideology. And we see that all around the world today, ladies and gentlemen. And the problem with this is that if you were living in a world where, for example, when women were fighting for their votes in this country, and therefore they said that the movement needed to resort to militant tactics in order to gain that sort of attention or gain that sort of momentum, then firstly, there's two things. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, even if we were to agree that if you do not resort to extremist measures or you don't resort to extremist politics, you cannot get the same kind of attention and the same kind of sort of sympathy for your goals, we still think, ladies and gentlemen, that it discredits the movement as a whole. And we saw this when we look at historical narratives of the suffragette movement, for example. If you look at the narrative of that, then you realize that the more extremist processes and the more extremist methods that you undertake, the less people are willing to associate with you, the less people are willing to engage with your side and to be seen as being the party that is going around to people who are acting in such a violent manner and trying to negotiate with these people. And the result of that, ladies and gentlemen, is that, not right now, and the result of that, ladies and gentlemen, is that the whole goal of the movement, even if the goal is a good one, gets discredited. And we see this in the world today, ladies and gentlemen. For example, whenever we're talking about the issue between Israel and Palestine, if you point towards Hamas, it is a very extreme organization. And in any sort of talks that happen about reconciliation, etc., Hamas is always an impediment in terms of reaching any sort of lasting agreement or peace treaty with Israel, or any sort of conclusion that is productive in the realm of geopolitics, ladies and gentlemen. And that is something that is just true. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is that if you resort to, even if the goals are justified at the end of the day, if the means that you are resorting to are means that are unethical, and by unethical, ladies and gentlemen, I mean if you are breaking the law, if you are leading to measures that result in the loss of innocent civilian life, then that is something that taints the goals of your movement and discredits whatever it is that you're fighting for, even if that cause is a good cause. And that is something that we believe is very, very harmful. Yes.
If a wider group is not paying attention to any of your disenfranchisement or suffering and making no attempt to change this, why on earth would passivity change anything for the better for you, and why should you care about their preferences?
So, the alternative that I'm presenting to you is not to sit passively and take whatever comes your way. I'm saying that in the world that we live in today, there are lots of other alternative ways of actually gaining attention for your cause. I completely agree and sympathize with the fact that if you're being ruled by basically, if a majority is exercising its tyranny, then that is something that you need to speak out against. But there are lots of other ways to do this. In the world of social media, where we have outlets such as Twitter, such as Facebook, such as the internet, where you can actually go out and organize protests that are peaceful, that do not need to resort to extremist measures or to extreme violent tactics, then we believe that that is the right way to deal with a problem. And at the end of the day, we live in a world today where, as I already said, where religious extremism is such an issue, where people want to be acting out sort of vigilante justice systems of their own creation. In a world like this, if we vote proposition today, then the message that sends to the rest of the world, the precedent that you're setting essentially is that it is okay to put the law secondary to what we think are our goals and our means, and we think that those means are justified because we believe in our cause and it is obviously unquestionably right. And that is a very dangerous message, because while you may have people being extremists for good reasons, such as the civil rights movement, such as gender equality, etc., you will still have people groups like ISIL, like the Taliban, like Al-Qaeda, asking for things and goals which perhaps we don't think are the right goals. And if you're going to extend this argument, this principle of if you feel disenfranchised, then you can, if you don't feel like your government's giving you anything back, you can undertake any sort of measures, then you need to extend that throughout the spectrum. And I look forward to hearing you defend that in your speech later on. I'm very, very proud, ladies and gentlemen, to be opposing this motion. Thank you.